Hey guys, this is a Lincoln LS, and it is not the car that you think it is, because underneath it is something totally different, and it's barely a Ford, really. I mean, most Lincolns are Fords underneath, right? And it barely qualifies as a Ford product. It's mainly just got the badges and some of the parts from Ford in it. But underneath, believe it or not, this is actually a Jaguar S-Type, which not a lot of people love the Jaguar S-Type, and they are not known for reliability. So to make a American luxury sporty sedan based off of a Jaguar, it's kind of a questionable decision that Ford made back in the early 2000s, which kind of actually I think makes this an interesting vehicle. Let's take a look at it.
Yeah, and there's actually there's an artifact of this being a maybe not so reliable sort of Jaguar product, really, that we'll show you a little later on in this video. But these are pretty funky cars. I think it's a car that a lot of people have forgotten about. The LS V8 specifically right here.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this was Lincoln's attempt, or their first attempt at making a sporty luxury sedan, right? They wanted something to compete with like the BMW 3 Series and the Mercedes C-Class. And this was their attempt at it. They figured, what better way to compete with the Europeans than to just have a European car with a Lincoln badge on it, right?
Could you imagine this being cross-shopped with a 3 Series? It's kind of a hard thing to wrap your head around in today's world. So, Brendan, tell me a little bit about some of the details on this car. What's under the hood?
Yeah, so these had a few different options, and let's pop the hood.
Hey folks, today's video is brought to you by SalvageReseller.com. This website allows you to bid live on online salvage auto auctions without a dealer's license. You can register for free or use the 20% off coupon in the description below. Go find your salvage car gem now.
If you got the base model, it just had a 3-liter V6, which was, you know, a Ford Jaguar V6 that put out not a lot of horsepower. We're talking like 210 horsepower or 220 in later versions. This, however, is the V8. Oh. So this got Jaguar's 3.9 liter V8, which pumped out like 250 horsepower.
Oh, so that's a hot car.
Yeah, so it still wasn't very fast. And that's because this is a 2002. If you actually got a 2003 or later, these were bumped up to 280 horsepower, which makes it a little bit more compelling.
Yeah, I mean, 280 is actually not that bad, but yeah, 250 horsepower from a V8, nothing to write home about, is it?
No, it's not. And I do like these notes that the previous owner left on here, that it takes 6 quarts of 5W20.
Yeah,
and
takes a lot of the investigating out of it. So that's actually not a bad thing.
Yeah.
Now, these cars were also rear-wheel drive, and one, I guess, positive aspect of this being based on a European platform instead is that it does have pretty much 50-50 weight distribution, doesn't it?
Yeah, these actually really did handle well, especially for being a Lincoln. Excuse me, especially for being a Lincoln, these handled really well. I mean, if you think back in the early 2000s, Lincoln was building the Continental and the Town Car, which are great, comfortable cruisers, which I love, quite frankly. But this was a huge departure from what they had been doing at the time. And so much so they really didn't sell all that well, hence why about 6 years later, it was discontinued.
Yeah, this is a pretty short run vehicle, which is part of the reason that I think a lot of people have forgotten about them, is that you really just don't see them around a lot because, well, like you said, they didn't produce them for that many years, 6 years, but also not a lot of people bought them.
Well, and not only that, but if you look at these back seats, and I'm going to hop around to the other side and hop in just so you can see. Now, I've got the driver's seat positioned where I would sit, and I'm only 5'9", and my legs are pushing up against the back of the front seat. So for a Lincoln, it's really not very spacious back here. I mean, in their defense, neither was a 3 Series or anything like that, but it does kind of beg the question of who is really your target audience, because I think a lot of the people that are looking for American cars expect more legroom than that. They want one of those big American luxury boats, and then people that are looking for European cars
Well, they're not looking for that Lincoln badge, so I think
Exactly.
I think it was doomed from the start.
Yeah, they thought like, oh, we're gonna bring the best of both worlds. We're gonna bring the comfort of an American luxury car and the sportiness of a European luxury car, right? When in reality, what it got was
Kind of the worst of both.
the worst, exactly. It got the unreliability of a European sports car and the not so much comfort and space of a European sports car, but the ugly looks of an American like floaty boat car, right?
I'll tell you what this car does have though, it's got a sizable trunk.
It does actually, yeah. You could, if you wanted to open this rear trunk, put the key in to open it, but this being a luxury car, you got your own little popper where you could pop it open. And I will say, it is a surprisingly spacious rear trunk. It's not quite Lincoln Town Car spacious, but it does have a huge amount of space to store things.
Yeah, I mean that at least is still very American car spec. I could easily fit in that trunk, so they did manage to give you that. Now, there is also some interesting history behind this car, and specifically the naming. There was a little bit of a fight over the name that they used on this, because this is not the only luxury sedan that brands the letters LS. So when they were originally coming up with this car, they kind of wanted to name it the LS6 and the LS8 to designate the different engine sizes, but Toyota didn't like how close that was to their LS sedan. So Toyota threatened to take legal action over that. And in response, Ford threatened them right back about their T150 pickup truck concept because of how close that name was to the F-150. So that concept became the Tundra.
Yeah, I mean, if you think back to this time when they were building their large trucks, or when Toyota was building their large trucks, it was called the T100. So a natural evolution of that name is the T150. But, with them throwing a little bit of shade at Lincoln for being like, hey, we already make a luxury sedan called the LS. Why are you infringing on our naming there? Well, Ford goes, well, you're infringing on ours. And so it was just kind of like shots fired, and everybody just took a step back, and we all said, okay, we'll go with LS, you go with Tundra, we'll just wipe our hands, and that'll be it.
So, yeah, a little bit of drama behind this car. But, they still ended up making it anyway, and it's kind of funny looking at this interior. This is very early 2000s American luxury car. You can see the all the wood trim and leather, kind of a rounded, bubbly dash. It's it hasn't necessarily aged all that well. I think you got to be a particular kind of buyer to appreciate this era of luxury cars.
Yeah, and if you are familiar with the Jaguar S-Type on the interior, you will know that this center stack is very, very similar to what you would find in the Jaguar, as well as like the instrument cluster and the steering wheel. It's all very, very derivative of that Jaguar, because that is essentially what this is. Now, the other interesting thing is that this also shared the platform with the Ford Thunderbird. So there's a more positive note you can spin on it, because the Thunderbirds have actually gone up in value pretty recently. And so if you say, well, you just got a 4-door Thunderbird, I think that makes it a little more interesting than saying you have a Lincoln badged Jaguar.
Well, and I will admit, there are a few things on this interior that they did do well. I think the wood on the shifter as well as on the steering wheel, I think that's pretty good. Plus, look at these leather door pockets.
Yeah, you got two. You got a stretchy leather door pocket and then a regular door pocket, so that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, and the seats are pretty decent.
Yeah, have you seen the center armrest and how shallow it is? I mean, look at that. I don't know if I could fit my phone in there.
Oh.
In fact, yeah, I can't even fit my phone in there. It's so small.
Yeah, there's some surprisingly small things on this car. Now, I said earlier in the video that we would show you a little artifact of this car being based on a Jaguar and being not necessarily the most reliable. And to do that, I will crank it up. And it might be hard to see on video. I mean, obviously, you can see the check engine light, but this car is running... Well,
yeah, you could probably see it if I put my hand here. You can probably see like My fingers are shaking a little bit. Yeah, that's really hard to tell. But, Case, how about I grab the camera and you drive this? Let's take it onto the test track.
Wow.
I'm gonna zoom out here so we can get a good view of you test driving the Lincoln LS.
Man, what a privilege to get to drive the LS on the track. Now, yeah, again, this one is not running that well. You can definitely tell it's got a rough idle, at least we can, sitting in the car, even from the passenger seat. But what I can say that's positive about driving this car is that it does ride really pretty well.
Yeah.
It might just be blown out a little bit, and that's why it feels so smooth, but...
Maybe this is just an early attempt at massaging seats, because it's kind of vibrating the seats a little bit as we drive it.
Yeah, maybe the rough idle was intentional.
Yeah.
They were trying to make it a nicer car to drive. Now, I haven't been to the auction in a while. Am I going the right way to get to the test track?
Yeah, just keep going down here, and then just to the right of that trash can up there is our little test track where we can give it a little squirt and, at least see the 0 to 30 or 0 to 40 on this.
Speaking of trash can, let's see how it accelerates. Straighten out the wheel, rear wheel drive. Let's see if it chirps the tires. Not really. It's not an aggressive car.
Now, here's an interesting fact. I want to see if we can try something a little different. Will you loop around and go back to that start again? So they designed this from the get-go, from the factory, because of EPA standards, if you didn't give it at least 60% throttle from the start, that it would start in second gear.
Interesting.
Just to get good MPGs. And so that's why a lot of people complained about just how slow these cars are off the line. So I think maybe if you brake torque it a little bit, it might maybe trick that, because it says that if you give it over 60% throttle, that it should start off in first gear.
Yeah, I don't expect we're at high risk of roasting the tires. So yeah, let's left foot brake it a little bit.
Oh, geez.
I'm not sure that was better, actually.
Yeah, I think what happened is it took off a little fast. I think you scared the car a little bit.
I did scare the car, actually.
Nannies kicked in and it said, no.
But, again, to this car's credit, it does actually drive like you would want a luxury car, too. It drives smooth. The steering is nice and light, not precise. It doesn't feel like old school BMW 3 Series steering, which is very, very good steering. But for what I think this car was trying to be, in some ways, it did actually hit the marks. And it's a pretty smooth, luxurious thing to drive. Doesn't scream performance to me, but if you find one that's cheap and in decent shape and the reliability aspect doesn't scare you too much, then it could be a decent run it into the ground kind of car.
Yeah, I mean, this is the kind of car that you buy assuming that the repair bills are going to be Jaguar-esque, because it is going to be Jaguar-esque to fix and keep this thing maintained and running on the road.
Yeah, I think this is the kind of car that you buy and do the minimum to it until it stops going, and then you move on.
Now, I may be dating myself a little bit, but I was in high school when this car came out, and I remember everybody was excited that finally an American luxury manufacturer making a fun, fast, sporty sedan. But, well, time has kind of not been kind to this car, I think, as it's lived on. They've kind of, along with the Jaguar S-Type that was out at that time, it's just gained a reputation for being fairly unreliable, not very fast, and not super engaging to drive compared to some of the competitors that were out at that same time. But it is an interesting piece of history because this was Lincoln's first attempt at making a sporty luxury sedan, and it could be something that's different to have out there on the road. And did you know, Case, that they actually offered the V6 version of this with a manual transmission? And I think that might be the one to get. Yes, it's only about 210 horsepower, so it's not very fast, but you could get a 5-speed manual, rear-wheel drive, American sedan,
If only they did it with the V8.
I know. They missed the boat on that one. Well, anyways, I'd love to know what you guys think in the comment section below. Do you love this Lincoln LS, or is it just kind of a forgotten car for a reason?
Did we break your heart, or do you agree with our conclusion here?
Yeah, either way, let us know in the comment section below. Please hit subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. This has been Brendan.
And Case.
Take care, guys.